Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to speak to the hearts of those who feel weary, those who have endured loss, and those who are holding on to hope. Because I am here to remind you, God will give you back what was taken. Divine restoration is on its way, and your breakthrough is closer than you think. When life hits you hard and you find yourself standing in the aftermath of loss, it's easy to feel like the ground beneath you has shifted, like everything you once knew has crumbled into dust. You may ask yourself, where is God in this moment? Does he see my pain? Will he really restore what's been taken from me? Those questions echo in the hearts of many, and they are valid. But what if I told you that God's promise of restoration is not just some vague hope or wishful thinking? What if I told you that divine restoration is a real, tangible part of his plan for your life, a plan rooted in his unwavering love and faithfulness? God's promise of restoration is one of the most powerful assurances in Scripture. It's a promise that transcends circumstances, that defies logic, and that reaches into the depths of despair to bring hope in life. When God promises to restore, he isn't just bringing back what was lost. He's creating a space for something even greater, something beyond your wildest imagination. But here's the thing, we often forget restoration begins with faith. Faith is not just a passive belief. It's an active trust that God is working, even when you cannot see it, even when it feels like everything is falling apart. Faith is the anchor that holds you steady in the storm, reminding you that the creator of the universe is orchestrating your comeback. Now, I want you to understand that God's promise of restoration is rooted in his character. It's rooted in his nature to redeem and to restore. In the Bible, there are countless stories of brokenness turned into beauty, of loss turned into gain, of despair transformed into joy. These stories aren't just ancient tales. They are living proof that God specializes in making all things new. When you look at the lives of those who have experienced divine restoration, you see a common thread. They refused to give up on faith. They kept their eyes on God's promise. And they trusted his timing, even when it was slow, even when it was hard. It's important to recognize that restoration doesn't always happen overnight. Sometimes the process involves a season of waiting for God to move in his perfect timing, waiting for the healing that only he can bring. During that season, it's easy to become discouraged, to question whether God is really listening or whether your pain is too much for him to handle. But I want to remind you that God's delays are not his denials. His timing is always perfect, and his plans are always for your good. When you trust in that, you position yourself to receive the fullness of his promise. Faith during these seasons of waiting is crucial. It's the kind of faith that says, God, I believe you are working even now, even when I cannot see it. It's the faith that keeps you praying, keeps you believing, and keeps you standing firm in hope. Because faith is what moves the hand of God. It's what activates his power in your life. And the more you trust, the more you align yourself with his divine plan. No matter how long the wait, no matter how deep the hurt, your unwavering trust in God's promise of restoration will carry you through. It's also vital to understand that God's restoration isn't just about returning what was lost. It's about renewal. It's about transforming your pain into purpose. It's your scars into stories of victory and your setbacks into setups for your comeback. When God restores, he does so in a way that exceeds your expectations, often in ways you never imagined. That's because he's a God of abundance, a God of restoration, a God who turns mourning into dancing and sorrow into joy. So you have to hold on to your faith tightly. You have to keep declaring over your life that restoration is on its way. Because the moment you start to believe that, you activate a divine power that begins to shift circumstances, open doors, and restore what was lost. Your faith isn't just a wish. It's a prophetic declaration that says, God, I trust you to do what only you can do. Let me tell you something about patience. It's not passive. Patience is active trust. It's choosing to stay hopeful even when the evidence around you suggests otherwise. It's choosing to believe in the unseen. When you cultivate patience, you're aligning yourself with God's divine timing. You're saying, God, I trust your plan, even if I don't understand it right now. And in that trust, you position yourself for the miraculous. Because divine restoration is coming, not because you deserve it, but because God is good and his love for you is eternal. Your journey toward restoration is not just about receiving back what was lost. It's about becoming stronger, more resilient, and more rooted in faith. It's about learning to trust even when the road is rough, to believe even when your heart is heavy, and to keep holding on to hope because of who God is, faithful, loving, and mighty to save. Your faith in God's promise is what sustains you through the waiting. Through the pain and through the tears, it's what keeps your spirit alive and your hope burning bright. Because the truth is, God is a restorer. He specializes in making beauty out of ashes, turning mourning into joy, and transforming loss into gain. The promise of divine restoration is not just a comforting thought. It's a divine guarantee rooted in his unchanging love. You may not see the full picture right now, but I encourage you, trust in God's promise. Trust that he is working behind the scenes, orchestrating your comeback, preparing the way for your restoration. Because when the appointed time comes, what was lost will be restored, multiplied, and more than you could have ever imagined. Keep holding on, keep believing, and keep trusting. Your divine restoration is on its way. Sometimes life throws us into storms so fierce that we feel like we're drowning in the waves of despair, overwhelmed by the weight of what's been lost. It's natural to feel despair, to be consumed by the darkness when your world seems to fall apart. But let me tell you something profound. Feeling despair doesn't mean you're weak. It simply means you're human. It's part of the journey. The real question is, what do you do in those moments? Do you let despair consume you, or do you choose to anchor your hope in something greater? That's the defining line, the moment when you decide whether your pain will define you or propel you toward your destiny. The truth is, despair is a natural part of the process, but it doesn't have the final say. It's a temporary state, not a permanent destination. When you're in the midst of heartbreak or disappointment, it's easy to think that the pain will never end, that the loss will swallow you whole, and that you'll never see the light again. But pain is a part of life, and loss is sometimes necessary for growth. The key is understanding that your feelings are valid, but they don't dictate your future. You have the power to rise above them, to refuse to let despair dictate your story. When you're feeling overwhelmed, remember that even in those dark moments, hope is alive. Hope is what whispers to your soul that better days are coming, that your pain is not the end of your story. Hope is the anchor that keeps you from drifting away into hopelessness. It's the voice inside that says, you are not finished yet. There's more to your story than this chapter, and that hope is rooted in the promise that God is able to turn your mourning into dancing, your sorrow into joy. It's rooted in the truth that divine restoration is coming, even when the circumstances seem impossible. Sometimes, the greatest act of faith you can exercise is simply to keep moving forward despite your feelings. It's to choose hope over despair, trust over doubt. It's to believe that the God who promised restoration is still at work, even when you can't see it. You might feel like your pain is too much to bear, like your loss is irreparable. But I want to remind you that your feelings don't have the final say. Your faith does. And faith says that no matter how dark the night, the dawn is coming. No matter how deep the hurt, healing is on its way. No matter how long the season of loss, divine restoration is not far behind. There's a difference between simply surviving and truly thriving. Many people go through the motions, barely holding on, waiting for the storm to pass. But thriving is a choice. It's a mindset rooted in hope, resilience, and unwavering trust in God's goodness. Even when your heart is heavy, you can choose to believe that better days are ahead. That's what separates those who overcome from those who remain stuck in despair. It's the willingness to shift your focus from what you've lost to what you're about to gain. It's about shifting your perspective from despair to expectation. You see, hope isn't just wishful thinking. It's a spiritual force that has the power to transform your life. When you intentionally cling to hope, you activate divine power that begins to shift circumstances in your favor. Hope is what fuels your faith, giving you the strength to persevere even when everything around you seems to be falling apart. Hope is what keeps your eyes on the promise, not the problem. It's what reminds you that God's plan for your life includes restoration, no matter how long it takes or how difficult the journey. It's important to realize that despair often comes from a place of comparison. We look at others who seem to have it all together or who have received what we long for, and we feel like we've been left behind. But I want to encourage you to stop comparing your chapter to someone else's highlight reel. Your story is unique, and God is writing it with divine intention. What you're experiencing now is temporary. The pain, the disappointment, the loss, all of it is part of your process to becoming who you were created to be. Trust that God is using it to prepare you for something greater. When you're in the depths of despair, you have a choice. You can sink or you can swim. You can let the waves of disappointment drown you, or you can choose to rise above them. It's not about denying your feelings. It's about acknowledging them and then choosing to believe that your future is brighter than your past. You can't control everything that happens to you, but you can control how you respond. And choosing hope, resilience, and faith will empower you to come out stronger on the other side. Now, I want you to understand that divine restoration often begins with a shift in your mindset. It's about changing the narrative you tell yourself. Instead of saying, "I've lost everything," declare, "God is restoring what's been lost, and I believe it's coming back better than before." Instead of dwelling on what was taken, start speaking life into your situation. Speak words of faith, hope, and expectation, because your words have power. They are the bridge between your current reality and your future destiny. The process of overcoming despair also involves recognizing that your feelings are valid, but they don't have to define you. Feel what you need to feel. Grieve what you need to grieve, but don't stay there. Don't allow your pain to become a permanent residence. Instead, let it be a stepping stone toward a greater purpose. Use your pain as fuel to propel you forward, to push you into a season of healing and divine restoration. In those moments of despair, remember that you're not alone. You're surrounded by a community of hope, faith, and love. Reach out for support, lean into your faith, and lean into the promise that God is with you every step of the way. Your breakthrough could be just on the other side of your pain. Your divine restoration is waiting for you to believe again, to hope again, and to trust again. Now, shifting to the next key point, understanding that divine timing often feels like the hardest part of the journey. Waiting for restoration, waiting for the fullness of God's promise to manifest. But I need you to see that divine timing is perfect timing. It's not about rushing or forcing things to happen. It's about trusting that God's plan is unfolding exactly as it should. When you learn to wait with patience and expectation, you align yourself with divine purpose. Waiting isn't passive, it's active faith in motion. It's trusting that while you wait, God is working behind the scenes to set up your comeback in ways you could never orchestrate on your own. The truth is, God's delays are not denials, they're divine setups. Sometimes what we consider setbacks are actually setups for a greater comeback. When you look back over your life, you'll realize that some of your greatest blessings came after seasons of waiting, pain, and disappointment. Those seasons of waiting are opportunities for your faith to grow stronger, your character to be refined, and your trust to deepen. When you embrace patience during these times, you're not just passively waiting, you're actively preparing for what's next. You're positioning yourself to receive more than you ever imagined because you've learned to trust in divine timing. Waiting also teaches us humility. It reminds us that we're not in control, that our plans are not always aligned with God's plan. And that's okay because God's plan is always better. When we surrender our timeline and accept His, we open ourselves up to divine surprises, blessings we never expected, opportunities we never dreamed of. Patience is a spiritual discipline that cultivates gratitude, trust, and perseverance. It's about recognizing that God's timing is perfect, and His timing results in the best outcome for our lives. In those moments of waiting, keep declaring that your restoration is coming. Keep speaking life over your situation. Keep trusting that God is working on your behalf. Because when the fullness of time arrives, the waiting will be worth it. You will see that every tear, every moment of despair, every season of pain was necessary to prepare you for the greater blessings ahead. Divine restoration is coming, not just because God is good, but because He knows what's best for you. Your role is to trust, to hope, and to wait with expectation, knowing that God's perfect timing will bring about your divine breakthrough in ways you never thought possible. There's a power that lies within you, a strength you might not even realize you possess, waiting to be unlocked in your most challenging moments. Sometimes life pushes you to the edge, and it feels like everything you've known is crumbling around you. It's in those moments that your true character is revealed. You see, adversity has a way of revealing what's really inside. Whether you're resilient, whether your faith is genuine, whether you're willing to stand strong when everything seems to be falling apart. That's why we can't afford to see setbacks or heartbreaks as the end of our story. Instead, we must recognize them as opportunities for growth, as divine invitations to step into a higher version of ourselves. Growth is often uncomfortable. It stretches you, pushes you beyond your limits, and sometimes makes you question whether you can handle what's happening. But it's in that discomfort that transformation begins to take shape. It's like the process of a seed buried deep in the earth. What looks like darkness and death is really the beginning of new life. When you're in that season of pain or difficulty, remember that God is cultivating something beautiful within you. He's pruning away the excess, cutting away the parts that no longer serve your purpose so that you can flourish in ways you never thought possible. Growth isn't about rushing the process. It's about trusting the process, trusting that what's happening inside you is preparing you for a season of extraordinary fruitfulness. The challenge for many of us is that we want immediate results. We want to see the breakthrough yesterday. But divine growth requires patience and perseverance. It's about showing up every day with a mindset that says, I may not see it yet, but I believe in what's happening beneath the surface. You have to understand that every hardship, every disappointment, every closed door is actually shaping your character and strengthening your faith. It's molding you into someone capable of handling the blessings that are coming. Because if you grow too fast or without proper roots, you could easily collapse under the weight of success or pressure. That's why God's process involves time to develop, time to heal, time to prepare for what's next. Growth also requires a shift in perspective. It's about seeing setbacks not as failures, but as lessons. Every stumble, every misstep, every disappointment is an opportunity to learn, to improve, and to come back stronger. When you embrace this mindset, you stop seeing obstacles as dead ends and start viewing them as stepping stones. Every challenge is an invitation to grow your faith, your patience, your resilience. It's an opportunity to develop the inner strength that will sustain you through future storms. When you look back at seasons of difficulty, you realize they were necessary for your development. They equipped you with wisdom, perseverance, and compassion. They made you more empathetic, more understanding, more anchored in your faith. Growth also involves surrender. It's about letting go of what no longer serves you, old beliefs, toxic relationships, limiting mindsets, and embracing what's new. Sometimes growth requires us to step out of our comfort zones, to face our fears head on, and to trust that God's plans for us are better than anything we could have imagined. You have to be willing to let go of control and surrender to God's process. Because when you surrender, you open yourself up to divine guidance. You allow God to lead you into new opportunities, new relationships, new levels of success. Surrendering isn't about giving up, it's about giving in. Giving into the divine flow that is constantly moving you toward your purpose. Growth also involves patience with yourself. It's easy to be hard on yourself when things aren't happening as quickly as you'd like. But remember, growth is a journey. It's not a sprint. You're becoming the person you're destined to be, and that takes time. Be kind to yourself along the way. Celebrate small victories. Acknowledge your progress and understand that every step forward, no matter how small, is a step toward your destiny. It's about cultivating a mindset of resilience, knowing that setbacks are only temporary and that your future is brighter than your past. There's a divine timing for everything, and part of growing is learning to trust that timing. Sometimes we want to rush ahead, to skip the lessons, to bypass the process. But growth requires patience, and patience requires trust. Trust that God is working behind the scenes, aligning everything for your good. When you trust in divine timing, you surrender the need to control every detail and instead focus on becoming the best version of yourself during the waiting period. Because in that process, you're not just waiting for the next season, you're becoming the person who can handle what's coming. Growth also requires courage. The courage to face your fears, to step into the unknown, and to believe that you are capable of more than you've ever imagined. It's about having the bravery to dream bigger, to stretch beyond your comfort zone, and to pursue your purpose with relentless determination. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward in spite of it. It's trusting that even when you're afraid, God's got your back. Courage is what propels you into your next season, even when the path isn't clear. It's what pushes you to keep going when everything inside you wants to give up. Growth is also about community. You weren't meant to do life alone. Surround yourself with people who encourage your growth, who challenge you to be better, who speak life into your vision. Sometimes, the people you least expect will be the ones God uses to push you forward. And other times, you might need to distance yourself from toxic relationships that hinder your progress. Growth often involves pruning relationships, habits, and mindsets that no longer align with your purpose. It's about cultivating an environment that nurtures your development. When you're surrounded by positive, faith-filled people, you create a support system that keeps you grounded and motivated. Remember that growth is a continuous process. It's not something you achieve overnight, but a lifestyle you embrace every day. It's about showing up with intentionality, humility, and a willingness to learn. It's about trusting that every experience, whether good or bad, is shaping you into the person you're meant to become. God is using every moment, every challenge, and every victory to prepare you for the next level of your destiny. You are in a divine season of growth, and your greatest days are still ahead. Now, as you embrace this journey of growth, recognize that your purpose is calling you forward. Your growth isn't just about personal development. It's about fulfilling your divine assignment. It's about stepping into the fullness of who you are created to be so that you can impact the world around you. Your growth will inspire others, encourage others, and remind them that they too can overcome and thrive. You are a living testimony that with faith, patience, and perseverance, you can rise above anything. Your story isn't over, and your growth is just beginning. There are new heights to reach, new depths to explore, and new victories waiting for you. Keep pressing forward, keep trusting the process, and keep believing that your best days are yet to come. In that space of growth, remember that every setback, every delay, every challenge is preparing you for what's next. God is shaping your character, refining your spirit, and equipping you with everything you need to walk into your purpose with confidence. Your journey of growth is a testimony in the making, a story of resilience, faith, and divine transformation. And as you continue to grow, you'll discover that the greatest version of yourself is still unfolding, more vibrant, more courageous, more filled with faith and hope than ever before. Keep growing, keep trusting, and keep walking boldly into the destiny that God has prepared for you.